right, so Samantha and I, she a little under the weather. She got something going on with her voice, right? So I'm gonna be doing most of the talking. I know y'all surprised because I don't talk that much. But today, what we have been talking about, as always, you know, the car is a sense of peace for us. It takes away the cares of the life for a little bit, and then especially when the children are asleep, it allows us the time to think and all kinds of stuff like that, right? So we were just talking and kind of flowing about this concept of like the flea doctrine, right? And I always get kind of bothered with the flea doctrine just because of the fact of what it leads people to do, how it can send people on the deep end of a spectrum that they don't need to go on, and just even this false sense of peace that people seem to seek out with doctrines like that. And most notably, you know, there's a couple of people who have left the States and went abroad, and I believe the Most High allows certain things to transpire just so people can see that it's not all sweet on the other side, for lack of a better term. And I also think it's an opportunity for people to kind of reflect and really check your heart posture, because we did a lesson on it before, but it talks about, the scripture talk about planting a vineyard where you are, right? And understanding the land of your captivity. Because the reality is the scriptures tell you in Jeremiah that you should seek the peace of the land of your captivity. And not only that, it says you should pray for it, right? Why does the scripture say that? Prophetically, it says you should do that whether or not the Most High has allowed you to be carried away captive there, because in the peace of the land of your captivity is your peace. And you have a lot of people that are ready to flee or move or want to do all this other stuff. You have a lot of people that, whether they admit it or not, out of the abundance of the heart and mouth speaks. They're speaking words that shows they desire judgment. They are speaking words that almost patterns a prayer of destruction of the land of their captivity. And the Most High says that you should seek the peace of the land, because whether you realize it or not, their destruction is your destruction. The Most High says we shouldn't. It says the day of the Lord is not desirable. It's a dreadful day, right? And so you got a lot of people who have a mindset that is contrary to Scripture, and is actually reinforced and encouraged by some of the doctrines that some people hold, and some of the doctrines and stuff that is perpetuated by different congregations about all of this type of stuff, right? What did the Most High tell you to do? He talked about planting the vineyard where you are. Basically establishing what you need where you are. Because the reality is you can try to go anywhere you want to go, but that is not your home, right? There's nowhere in this earth is your home. Whether you are grafted in or whether you are descended by genetics, nowhere in this earth is your home. Why you think the brother Paul constantly talked about, I'm a sojourner in this land? Why you think when Israel was delivered from Egypt, they went through a wilderness? They were constantly on a journey to find the promised land, right? That's why the scripture talk about the prophets. They desire to see these things and stuff like that, right? But we know Jerusalem is gone. But there's a better Jerusalem, a new Jerusalem that is being created, right? And when that time comes and the sky cracks and everything is said and done, it's going to descend, right? And the meek shall inherit the earth. Then shall the earth be your home. Then shall the new Jerusalem be a dwelling place. Then shall the Most High be our God, and we shall be His people, as it was always supposed to be. Now, the question I have for people who do pray about the destruction and almost seem to be gleeful at the downfall of certain things, right? What is the source of your joy in that? Is it from a place of bitterness because of what's happened in the past, right? Does that pattern the doctrine of Christ and the mindset that He has? The Father tells you plainly in the scriptures that if you see Him moving against your enemies, He said, don't rejoice at it, because he will see your rejoicing and he'll turn away his wrath. That means he don't like when he got to do that, right? He gets pleasure out of the judgment of sin. He gets pleasure out of restoring unjust weights and just by the nature of who he is, right? But the scriptures say he gets no pleasure for the destruction of the wicked. So if he himself, the one true living God of Israel, gets no pleasure from the destruction of the wicked, why do you rejoice at stuff like that, as though you are exempt? Because if he start doing what you praying and hoping that he do, right? I don't even know why I said do like that. But if he starts to execute that, are you prepared? As a man who has a spouse or children, do you have food and water when the food and the water becomes scarce? When the famine and the pestilence hits the land, are you able to take care of your seed? You can go to the store right now, buy some flour, and I share this because I know my wife, they doing a lot of stuff with the Pursuing Biblical Womanhood group. Like, it's a beautiful community, right, where they learn how to bake and do everything like that. But let me ask you this question for the fellas. What happens when you can't go to the store and buy flour? Do you know how to make flour? Do you know what to grow to produce flour? Right? If the earth gets cursed outside and there's a drought, do you have a system in place where you can still continue to grow your food? Stuff like that. Do you have medical supplies? Do you know how to perform tie up a suture, do stitches? Do you know how to do any of that? Do you know that you can use a tampon to plug a bullet wound? Stuff like that, like small stuff, but it's not common knowledge. Do you know what is necessary to endure that tribulation period? Because the pre-tribulation rapture is not a thing, right? When everybody get caught up, that's when it's over, right? So you desiring certain things, but are you prepared for that? Do you even understand what you're asking for? Do you? And the thing with that is, most people don't. They don't. Yeah, we can study prophecy. We could read the book of Revelation, and we could see all of these false narratives that the enemy constantly put out there to keep people off their toes. That's why every people always talking about, oh, this is it. The devil constantly doing that, so at some point you go back to sleep. But when this stuff hit, it's gonna hit, and you're not gonna know. Like, I'm telling you, are you prepared for that? Do you have stuff you can barter and trade if you need to? It's gonna get real. But outside of that, in the meantime, if you do all of this stuff and try to get up and you try to go somewhere, right? How you gonna prepare? You're gonna transition and go to a place that's not like, and I used home earlier, but this is why I say that, right? Your home is where you are. Just put it like that. This earth is temporary. This life is temporary. So where you live is your home. You know the streets. You know the neighborhoods. You know the family. You know the people. You know this area. Wisdom will tell you it is foolish to uproot like that unless the Most High Himself told you to do it. Because we know about Abraham and all of that, right? But if He don't tell you to do that, you just following somebody or you just going off what people are talking about, you gotta understand He will sustain you where He sends you. But if He ain't sending you, the sustenance is not gonna be there, right? You will not be sustained. And if anything, it shows a lack of wisdom and spiritual immaturity when you're swayed like that. Because you'll relinquish everything you understand and know over here. You'll relinquish everything that you have in place where you could actually start to prepare for those rough times and go to a place where you don't know anybody, where they might not be receptive of you, regardless of complexion. Because of where you come from in this nation, you will be viewed as an other, right? The cultural mannerisms is different. How we conduct ourselves is different, because as much as you might be against the place that you are, you still carry tendencies, right? And there might be exceptions, there might be. But for the most part, you got to understand it's not going to be what you think it is. So seek the peace of the land that you are inhabiting, right? Because in their peace, you have peace. Which means by default, if they don't have peace, you won't have peace. Right? So that's all I got. That's something to keep in mind, because a lot of people get on that stuff, man. And I'm like, where y'all going? Like, where y'all going? Like, you talking about passports and everything. Granted, I'm not gonna say don't get a passport. I think you should have a passport. You should have a means to get around the earth, right? But y'all saw what happened a few years ago. All that paperwork don't matter if certain things are in place. So take that for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Because I had passports, but it was like, if you ain't got this, you can't come here. So get what you need to do, get what you need to get, and be on it. But you gotta understand, if you can't go anywhere, if it gets that bad, borders are closing, everything, what are you gonna do? How are you gonna maintain? Alright? And if you live in a city, you should always have an exit plan. You should always have an exit plan. A lot of people left the city a few years ago because they weren't in a position to do so. But we ain't thinking like, we trying to leave and go somewhere that ain't for you. It never was for you. It never will be for you. The Most High has multiplied your seed in the earth. Like in Egypt, you gotta understand, when Israel was in Egypt, the Most High had multiplied their number. And their power was in the land where they multiplied. That's why Pharaoh was moved against them the way he was, because of their number. So you need to understand what the Father has done and where He's established you. He could have put you anywhere else. He planted you here. Out of everybody that was scattered, right? You got people scattered everywhere, but you were scattered here. So do with that what the Father desires you to do. And you need to build what needs to be built. Strengthen yourself, strengthen your hands, strengthen your prayer life, your fasting life. And you put your hands to the plow, do the work of an evangelist, right? Support those who are laboring amongst you, right? Rightly divide the word of truth, and just be prepared, right? Just be prepared, because you only got so much more time to prepare.